In Jujutsu Kaisen, almost every sorcerer has a curse technique. Everyone from Kento Nanami to Gojo Satoru all have a unique ability. It's a core part of the universe that Akutami Gege has created, and while they make for interesting fights, there's actually a deeper concept behind curse techniques, and it's tied to the user themselves. As I said, most people in Jujutsu Kaisen have curse techniques, and these techniques are intrinsically tied to the user on a conceptual level. What do I mean by that? Well, fundamentally, each curse technique reflects the user's understanding of themselves. A curse technique and domain expansions are influenced by interpretation and change depending on the interpretation of it. Each curse technique perfectly represents the wielder, and no better example of this is Kinji Hakari and Ryomen Sukuna. In Kinji Hakari's case, his view of the world is one of a gamble, to risk it all and win it all, or lose everything, and his technique reflects that. If Hakari hits a jackpot, he becomes unkillable, perhaps one of the strongest techniques there is, and if he doesn't hit a jackpot, his technique is near worthless, with it not really having any real effect. Hakari's joy comes from that gamble, to experience the fever and to change the world through a gamble, and his abilities represent this with its uncertainty of success, just as Hakari views change as uncertain, with his own technique mimicking this ideal. For Ryomen Sukuna, his technique is destruction, an unknown, invisible force that cannot be perceived even by the unordinary Jujutsu sorcerers. A perfect replica of his view of self-fulfillment, his technique is singular in purpose. Dismantle and cleave can only destroy that which Sukuna finds displeasing, and it's more capable of that than any other curse technique. It reflects Sukuna himself, who only exists solely for his own pleasure and displeasure. He lives for himself, and his techniques can only destroy what he wants. Cleave and dismantle have no further purpose but destruction, just as how Sukuna is called a natural disaster, something that has no other purpose but destruction. Others may view Sukuna like this, as a calamity, because they cannot comprehend the deeper meaning behind his strength. The self-fulfillment and self-obsession Sukuna has is the pinnacle of Jujutsu, because he has the ultimate interpretation of himself. His view on his own existence is perfect, and so his power and technique reflect that. Sukuna wants nothing more than to be happy, and he's aware of that. His technique functions in perfect synchronicity with Sukuna's will, because Sukuna perfectly understands what his will and purpose are. For someone like Naoya Zen'in, he could never reach the heights of Toji Zen'in, because he wanted to be Toji Zen'in, instead of understanding himself and focusing on his own purpose and existence. Naoya could not understand that to reach the power of Toji, he had to realize what his own existence was, and to understand his own purpose in reality. If Naoya was to understand that his true desire was to be strong and not to be Toji, to stop comparing himself to others and to truly understand his own wishes, then he would have obtained the power to defeat Maki. The reason Maki herself could reach the strength that she did despite not being a sorcerer was because she stopped trying to be like Toji and started understanding why Toji was strong, and the deeper reason behind the idea of freedom. She became truly free from comparison to Toji and reached his level. Maki distanced herself from the idea of "I want to be Toji" that she shared with Naoya in their fight, and grasped the idea of "I want to be Maki." She understood victory and freedom and achieved her true wish. Returning to Sukuna for a moment, you may notice that he has a sort of obsession with the moonlight. Whenever it's around, he comments on it and has a sort of fondness for it. Even small understandings like this tie into curse techniques. Sukuna is surprised that Jogo did not understand what his curse technique was, and this relates to the moon's illumination, as no one during Sukuna's lifetime truly understood the moon's glow. It's a light that they desperately tried to grasp the origin and meaning of, but failed, as it was always out of reach. Sukuna is the only one to truly understand the origin of that glow, and probably this metaphor. The moon's glow is symbolic of Sukuna's power. Everyone grasps onto the glow of Sukuna, and to a similar extent, Satoru and Gojo. They grasp onto their power without understanding the true origin of it, the moon itself. The understanding of the self and your true function and purpose is represented by the moon itself. The glow, the byproduct of that understanding, and the moon is power. Everyone latches onto that byproduct without understanding what comes before it, what causes it to be. JJK's narrative is so interwoven with itself because everything I have just talked about ties back into Jujutsu sorcery. Because in Sukuna's case, he does not care about power. He makes it very clear that he would gladly give up massive chunks of his curse energy to maintain his happiness, because that cursed energy and power is not what he cares about. It is a result of his overwhelming selfishness and refusal to compromise on his own understanding of reality. And that's what Jujutsu sorcery is about. It's made a point that the more insane a sorcerer, the more they have suffered, the stronger they are. And while many would attribute this to more negative emotion and thus more cursed energy, this simply isn't true. The reason it makes them stronger is because when pushed to the limit, a human truly understands who they are, which brings me to Yuji Itadori, the sorcerer with no technique. Yuji is a perfect example of this. When Yuji suffered his most devastating and mentally breaking encounter with Mahito, he realized what his function was: to kill curses, and almost every action Yuji has taken since has been to further that goal. Yuji begins to understand and shift his view of reality after he was pushed to the breaking point. It wasn't negativity born from this encounter that made Yuji stronger, it was the grasping of his true self, and this is what Mahito is supposed to symbolize with ISP, and why he asks Yuji if he will wish him a happy birthday. Because this is the point that Mahito's soul evolved, and he also began to truly understand his view of the world: to kill humans. Yuji and Mahito were the same person in different bodies, and this is why Yuji at the end of the fight agrees with Mahito. They are the same. This is all important because it ties into why Yuji is yet to acquire a curse technique, and why he did not start with one. He's formless, he has no interpretation of the world that's solidified, and Mahito points it out. He had no resolve and no determination. Without the determination to truly want to act upon something, Yuji could never have an interpretation of himself, because he has no idea what the concept of Yuji truly is. After Mahito's death, Yuji begins to form an interpretation of himself, one of a cog in a greater machine whose sole purpose is to kill curses. This is the reason, I think, Yuji will obtain Sukuna's curse technique, not because of the circumstance of Sukuna being inside of him, but because his understanding of himself will almost be the same as Sukuna's, yet possibly twisted. Sukuna's understanding of the self is his own happiness, whilst Yuji's will be the destruction of cursed spirits. He will obtain, I think, an even stronger version of Sukuna's curse technique, because his version of Cleave and Dismantle won't be in service of destroying what makes him unhappy. Its sole purpose will be the annihilation of curses, perhaps a positive cursed energy Dismantle and Cleave. I think this is supported too by Gojo believing Yuji and the others will surpass special grades, because I think Yuji will take the self-fulfillment ideal to the absolute extreme, an understanding even beyond Sukuna's. Sukuna lives in a twisted form of absolute selfishness, and I believe Yuji will live in a twisted form of absolute selflessness. Sukuna destroys that which makes him unhappy, and Yuji may destroy that which makes others unhappy, i.e. curse spirits, further tying into the name of Ryomen Sukuna, the double-faced spectre, and tying into why Yuji is a perfect vessel, because he and Sukuna share, or will share, a perfect understanding of themselves and the world around them. Thank you for watching, everyone. I thought of this kind of on the fly, and I thought it was a very interesting topic, because I do believe that Yuji will surpass Ryomen Sukuna. I think that's made very clear by Gojo explaining that towards the beginning of the series, and I think that there's a heavy narrative already established that would support that idea, and I just wanted to quickly get it out there and have sort of a video on Yuji and his potential to surpass Sukuna. Let me know what you want to see next. My name has been Cursed Valor, and I hope you have a wonderful day.